Hi, welcome back to the Mindful Movement community. Nicki, Noftz, Flies instructor and owner of Mindful Movement. Today we're going to talk a little bit about back bending. So I got a question asking a little bit more about back bending, these extension exercises which are great for strengthening your back as well as building even flexibility. However, at the same time, these exercises can be very compressive if you're not doing them properly. So we're going to look at a couple yoga poses, we're going to look at a couple Pilates exercises, and we're going to see how we can better decompress our spine in these exercises so that we are not hurting our backs, but rather strengthening and building more flexibility. So let's start with a pretty basic cobra or swan, as you would know it in Pilates. They're very much the same. Your hands are by your sides, tops of your feet into the mat. And as we lift up into this position, what most people tend to do is crank back into the low back here, if you see that. So it's kind of a pushing up. And what we want when we're doing these decompression of the spine is we want more length through the spine. So then a lot of people tell you to pull forward, so then you start hearing pull forward as you come up. But what it is that we really need to bend the spine. It's not just a pulling forward, it's a bending and an opening of the spine. And this is going to be for any of the back bending exercises that we do. So when we open the spine a little bit more, this means we need to release. We have to release in our front side so that we get a stretch through our abs, a stretch through our hips. We need to open the chest, not by throwing back and closing off our spine and crunching in the shoulders, but rather a nice pulling forward from the abs, which then allows the chest to open and expand, and a release in the upper back. If you try and pull down in the shoulders, and I'll show you this, if you pull down like this in the shoulders, what you do is, you see how that pushed me down and forward? Now I'm trying to fight with myself. So what you've just done when you do that pulling back is that you've just put a bunch of force into the body. So it's like taking a 25-pound weight, throwing it right onto your back there, and then trying to come up through it. The body's fighting itself. It doesn't want to do it. It makes it harder for the spine to open. So when we do come up, if as you're lifting, instead of cranking back, or pulling down in the shoulders, you let the abs stretch forward, you let the chest open, you see now that we get a more even decompression in the spine. Now where the head goes, depending on if you're in yoga or Pilates, we're still not hanging or pulling into the shoulders, but we're finding that stretch and that openness through the spine, as opposed to a crunching or a pushing down. It's an openness. And this is what it's going to be in any of the other exercises we look at. So let's look at shoulder bridge. If we come here onto our backs now, we go, and let's say we're doing the Pilates version of it, which is a moving exercise. We start to lift up here, and what people tend to do is, now I have to get up, I squeeze my butt and I shove up. I now shoved a lot of force into my neck, a lot of force into my shoulders, and I really don't have much on my feet, so then people start telling you, put more weight into the feet, except I'm squeezing my butt, and I'm putting a lot of force back into the body. So here we go again. The body's fighting with itself. We're throwing a lot of force back on the body when really what the body wants to do is release and open up more. So instead of squeezing the butt or shoving those hips up, again, you have to go back to that spine, trying to stretch through the abs, trying to get lift from a grounded place of being balanced in between the shoulders and the feet. We also don't want to, again, pull down on the shoulders. If we start pulling down on the shoulders, as you can see, what that'll do is pull down on the body. It's that same way of putting excess force into the body. The body doesn't want that. The body wants to lift if we can just lighten it a little bit. So when we come up now, as I start to roll through the spine, instead of shoving up at this point, all I'm going to do is try to open my spine more. Keep heavy into my feet, keep heavy into my shoulders, keep heavy into my head. And as I open up now, we notice the spine just kind of keeps going. There's not this kind of start and shoving up place, but more of a natural bridge and an opening place. And then as I melt down, I let that spine manipulate all the way through. It's not a forcing or a shoving, but it's a spinal movement
that I'm going to just completely fully open into without putting excess force into the body. And the less force I put into the body, the more likely I can get that tissue to open up and get more length through the spine, which equals that decompression that we're always looking for. And when you're doing these back bends this kind of way, you're not going to feel like you have to go back in the other direction. So many times we're going back into child's pose, or we're stretching out that because we're feeling very compressed back there. When you're doing extension exercises properly or back bending properly, you don't feel that need. Now you will want to probably go into a rounded position. That's just natural for the spine and building flexibility and strength. However, it's not necessary in the place of that you have to feel that need to stretch that out. Actually, when you're doing this kind of back bending, it feels really, really good, and it just feels very open and very freeing. Freeing being the key. So let's look at a little bit more challenging one now. Let's look at yoga camel. When we're doing our back bends in camel, what most people do, whether your feet are under or flat, either one, as they're doing this, they just pull backwards, and they put a lot of force into that lower back. So now there's a lot of force into the lower back. They're holding on for dear life, and their body's freaking out. So then somebody starts telling them, push the hips forward. Well, that's kind of the same thing as in that shoulder bridge. You squeeze the butt and you push these hips forward. What that did not do was open my spine. All that did was push my energy forward, which great, helps me balance out a little bit more, but now makes me compress more into my lower back. I'm going to get that tight place, and then I'm going to try and haul out of this thing, and it's going to be painful. Again, this is that opening of the spine. It's a releasing into it. It's a letting go. There's some level of trust that has to happen in these back bending exercises. So now, as we go back, instead of trying to fall backwards, push the hips forward, I'm going to take that same concept of stretching and opening up my spine. And as I open my spine up now, by stretching through the abs, opening through the chest, not again squeezing the shoulder blades, but opening it up. Now I get a more complete back bend. Now if my back was not this open, well, it might not go that far. Maybe my level is just to here, working on that stretch and that openness that comes through the front side. And that would be perfectly fine until you can get to the point where you can open up into this, including that upper back. For most of us, it's the upper back that's the problem. When the upper back and the middle back is not moving and they're stuck, it puts a lot of force into that lower back, which tends to get a little bit hypermobile. So now you're cranking on that part of your back, and you're not opening the place that you need to. So on a physical level, getting the decompression is going to come from stretching through the front side, softening the upper and middle backs so those start to bend, to open up more, and not putting excess force into the body. Not trying to squeeze or shove down or push against what the body naturally wants to do, which is decompress and lift up a little bit more and open up into it, which then fully expresses the pose. Now, on a physical level, this is going to help strengthen your spine. It's also going to help build more flexibility in the spine, especially in those tight areas. On a mental level, to open up into it that much, that can be very hard for a lot of us. Emotionally, we like to hold our power in and not necessarily have that vulnerability. To be that open does mean you have to trust yourself on some level, let go into it a little bit more, and just let that full expression come out. Too many times, though, we're going to be freaking out about that, and we're going to start shaking, or we're going to lock down, and we're going to tighten. You got to relax, release into it, and then just try and get that openness. And if it doesn't come up all the way, modify it. Do a smaller version of it until you feel comfortable enough to just really open up and let go into it. And that way, when you open up into that, you find that you're not going to be hurting yourself. You're going to find that your back is going to be a little bit stronger. You're going to find more flexibility through the front side. You'll find ease in being able to hold and maintain these poses or exercises. And you're mentally just going to feel very open about it, very invigorated, rather than trying to hide or fight against it. So you want to just take the time, work at your level, until you find that right balance of where you can decompress, so that you're not hurting your back, so that you can mentally clear out
and find that trust in opening truly into the exercise or pose. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me, Nicki at mymindfulmovement.com. I love to take your questions, so please keep sending them so I can do more videos to answer your questions and keep you feeling healthy mentally and physically. Thanks.